Hello and welcome to BCM215 Game Media Industries. In this video, I'm going to go over the subject information and give you a brief rundown of how the subject is going to operate this session. Let's get started. All right. Hi, my name is Dr. Christopher Moore. I'm a senior lecturer in digital communication and media here at the University of Wollongong. And this subject will be running on campus. There are 2 seminars that run on campus, and there is a 3rd seminar that is running in online mode. So if you're having trouble getting to campus on a particular day, you can tune in to the Discord where we will be running the subject in the afternoon. You can contact me on Discord. And I recommend that you add me on Discord and we can chat there. We do have 2 tutors in this subject, and their details will be on the subject Moodle page. If you have formal correspondence, if you need to discuss reasonable adjustments or academic considerations, please make sure to send those through email. So formal correspondence. But if you just have a quick question that you want me to answer, I'm more than happy to do that via Discord. Please leave email for just those formal operations that have to go through the university system. If you've got a question about a particular element of the course, however, send me a DM on Discord and we can chat. So the first thing to do in this subject is to go to the subject Moodle page and check out the subject outline. The second thing, and you'll need to have a copy of the PDF for week 1 to chat about in the seminars. The most important thing you can do before coming to your first tutorial, or we call them seminars in this subject, in week 1 is the questionnaire at the top of the Moodle page. The questionnaire is quite simple. There's only a couple of questions, and it's a really important way to help us capture the ideas that you have about what you want to get out of the subject. There are 2 questions. What do you expect for your grade in this subject? And what do you aspire to? These are really important questions. And so this is a 200 level subject. So you will have had a first year experience. So you will kind of have an expectation around where your grades are. But you might also have an aspiration. So I'm looking to support students who just want to pass the subject or are looking to get a credit in the subject. When you tell us what your expectations and your aspirations are, when it comes to marking your work, it'll be a lot easier to say, okay, here is the level that you're at. This is what you've told us that you'd like to achieve. Here's how we can close that gap. If you're looking at getting a distinction or a high distinction in your aspirations or in your expectations, then one of the best things you can do is to message me on Discord and arrange a consultation. This can be a 5, 10, 15, even 20-minute chat on Discord at some point in the week that suits you and fits into my timetable. And we can talk about how you can achieve that in this subject, or how you are thinking about your experience in the digital and social media major or the BCM as a whole, or even where you want to take your degree and what kind of professional aspirations you have for the future. So one of the things about expectations is that it's detailed quite explicitly in the subject outline what is required at university study. I totally understand that you will have work commitments, that you will have family and social commitments. But the UOW policy is quite clear when it says that 1 credit point is worth 2 hours of study per week. Now that includes lectures and tutorials. So a 6 credit point subject like this is expected that you have around 12 hours of study per week. Now, I think that's a lot. That is a lot, and perhaps we need to rethink that policy. So I'd like to reframe it like this. There is about 1 hour of lecture materials each week. Some weeks shorter, some weeks maybe a little bit longer. These are pre-recorded video lectures for you. I'm in the series of recording some new lectures for the subject with some new topics. And then you have your 2-hour tutorial or seminar, workshop, however you want to describe it. It's more than a tutorial because you'll be actively producing your major project for this subject as part of those seminars. And then you have 9 hours or plus hours, as I like to think about it, in terms of your engagement in the assessment and the aspirations that you have for your learning, both in this subject and in your degree overall. So that's something to think about, is that's quite a high level of expectation at university level for 12 hours of study per week per subject. And so a full-time load is considered to be 4 subjects, which is 48 hours, which is more than an average work week. So I know that's a lot to put on you. So you should be talking to your tutors, you should be talking to your subject coordinator, myself, about what you want to get out of the subject and how you can balance your time commitments in your week, and thinking carefully how you're going to do that. Please be prepared when you come to the seminars. Please have a look at the lectures. I watch most YouTube at 2 speed. Maybe I'm a freak like that, but I like to get through the materials that I'm watching quite fast. And so you're welcome to put me at 2 speed. There are readings in some of the weeks. So I don't expect you to have memorize this, but certainly have a look and take a quick overview of the PDFs for those materials, so that you can contribute to the discussion and help improve your own approach to the subject in your blogs and your digital artifact. The subject is also BYOD. We are working in the Maker Studio. And so it's important that you bring a device each week that you can work on. Laptop, phones, tablets, these are fine, just as long as you've got a device that you can do research on and that you can type and that you can create content on. All right, let's talk about game media industries. So I'll be talking more specifically about what game media is and the industrial relations in the next part of the lecture. I wanted to just kind of give us a quick overview and refer back to the subject learning outcomes. So the idea is that you are looking at the emergence of game media as a key element in the global creative economy, right, as an industry. This subject, we go right back. We go right back to the 17 and 1800s. We look at the emergence of game arcades and parlors in the early 19th and 20th centuries. And we look at the history of the game industry as it emerges in the 60s and 70s, looking at developments in the 70s and 80s, focusing on Australian development scene in the 90s and 2000s. So there is a lot of looking back at the history of the game industries in order to help us better understand what the results are now. Right? We can't really understand the present unless we have a good grasp on the past. So the focus for this subject, however, is on producing a sophisticated analysis of a game media text or paratext. So you'll be doing research and you'll be actively analyzing a game media text or paratext. Now, there's another video this week on exactly what a paratext is. But game media texts can really cover a lot of territory. For example, if you are also doing an advertising and marketing major alongside digital and social media major, you might look at game media advertising campaigns or marketing campaigns. You might look at the way in which a digital or app, right, a phone app is being marketed on social media. That counts as a game media text. Maybe you're coming to us from journalism, where you might be interested in the entire media industry around games criticism, journalism, and review. Perhaps you're from screen media and you're interested in documentary making, transmedia storytelling, maybe other screen media like live streaming. This will be a place where you can experiment. Maybe you want to create a short film about games or game media texts or game media players in some way in this subject. That brings us to the demonstration of elaborate digital literacies and media production skills. So you'll be working on a digital artifact in this subject, but you will be required to not only produce a sophisticated account of a game media text and an analysis, you're going to be required to communicate that analysis to a public audience via some form of media production. So you will have to plan, develop, and produce a public-facing podcast, video essay, live stream, some kind of digital or screen media to a public audience, communicating your high-level analysis. And so part of that will be in conceptualizing and developing solutions to real-world issues. The games media industry has a history where it has problematic industrial relations with staff. It's had quite a provocative relationship in games culture between men and the representation of women. There are issues to do with the diversity of experiences in game texts. And so these are real-world issues that you can address as part of your analysis and reaching audiences that might not be otherwise catered to by the mainstream game media industry. So previous knowledge about games is not a requirement for this subject. And in fact, if you don't like games, you're not interested in games, or you don't like games, that's actually an advantage because you are going to be able to be more critical than someone who is passionate about playing games. The idea is that you will be speaking to an audience that is similar to you, right? You want to find an audience who shares your thoughts and your ideas and your perspectives, and you want to talk about why it is that you don't like games. You are encouraged to be very critical. You, as a media and communication professional, will be finding yourself in a position in an employment situation where you're not happy with what you're working on, or you're not enjoying it, or you think the topic is uninteresting. This will be a challenge to you. And so how can you turn that around? How can you flip that? How can you make this subject and your approach interesting to you? How can you produce a media project that is interesting to you and an audience that shares your thoughts? So being critical about games, saying you don't like games, these are all fine. We encourage this, absolutely. But we can still get on with the job of doing high-level analysis and making that analysis relevant to a public audience. So there are a range of topics, and I really encourage you to look at all of the lectures, at least in brief, ahead of time. We talked about the amount of time you can spend on a subject. Week 1 is probably a good time to look through most of the lectures. For example, there is a lecture later on in the session on the concept of agency. Now, that's actually a really useful concept that you might find useful to think about early on in the session. So rather than think about the subject as having kind of a weekly topic that you'll talk about, it's best to kind of look ahead, look at all the topics, see what's interesting to you, and then you can start using that right away, particularly in your blog posts and your digital artifact. You can also work collaboratively. Now, when it comes to submitting for an assessment, you'll be assessed on your individual contribution. But say you want to create a podcast or you want to experiment with live streaming, then you can work in collaboration with other students and then submit your own version of that work to be assessed. Talk more to your tutor, but if you've got someone that you want to work with or you chat to someone you find interesting and you want to create a project with, then we really support that. But you just need to work with your tutor, or you can contact me on Discord and we can chat about how that's done effectively. So the digital artifact in this subject, it's a self-directed project where you're going to be researching and you're going to be experimenting in communicating to a public audience. The artifact will have a focus, so you will be producing an analysis of a game media text or paratext using an analytical framework that will build out of concepts and ideas from the subject and making this available to a public audience. So there are opportunities to adapt a previous digital artifact if you want to do that, but maybe you also start a new one. Now, this subject actually aligns very carefully with BCM215, Media Ethnographies. So if you're doing BCM215, you can combine your digital artifacts in that subject and in this subject. You'll produce different reports, but the core work that you're doing can overlap in really productive ways. Okay, so we've talked about the digital artifact, and there'll be a pitch, and there'll be a series of blog posts that you'll be writing each week to get you in the zone of creating an analysis. And then at the end, you'll be producing a report about your activity and your self-evaluation of your learning. So digital artifacts can vary. You might be producing video essays, short podcasts. You might be producing blog posts, social media platform content. We've had students engage in cosplay, participate in esports, and do live streams. I actually really encourage experimentation and investigation, but I wouldn't limit your activity to one platform. And this comes back down to aspirations, right? If you're looking for an HD, then you should speak to your tutor and myself about what it is that you can do to, bring additional material to your digital artifact in order to achieve that distinction or high distinction. At 200 level, right? We're requiring significantly more contribution to the digital artifact than at 100 level. And that's important to remember. Okay, now we're getting into the real detail of the digital artifact. So in order to analyze a game media text, you're going to be assembling a triangulated analytical framework from concepts from the subject lectures and readings. So I'll give you an example from a piece of work that I did with a colleague on the history of internet games, where we created an analytical framework using three concepts: technique, space, and modality. The important thing to remember, now keep this in mind as you proceed, when you have a framework, a triangulated framework like this, you have two sides of the triangle that you use to talk about the other side. So let's take for example, mobile phone games. Maybe there's a mobile phone game that you've had on your phone previously, and sometimes you break it out in moments of boredom or waiting in a queue, right? And you play this app. For me, it's Clash Royale. So when I have a moment, when I'm brewing a cup of tea or standing in line for the coffee, I might play this game because it takes about 2.5 to 3 minutes. So let's talk about technique. Okay, technique, or the technologies involved, is that this is a mobile game. So this is a game that runs on a range of mobile devices, Apple devices, Android devices. It has a very low technical requirement, so it operates on old and new phones. It does require internet connectivity. So that's an interesting part of both its technique and its modality. So we can also talk about the technique of this mobile game in terms of the spaces that we play it. And I did that, right? I talk about playing it in my kitchen while I'm brewing a cup of tea. Sometimes I'll play it in the bathroom while I'm brushing my teeth, right? So this is the space in which we play on the phone. The modality is that it is networked, right? It does require an internet connection. So if I don't have that, if I'm in a space that maybe the signal is low, I won't be able to play that game. Part of its modality is that it is a multiplayer game. So I'm actually playing against another person. So we are both reliant on the technique of Wi-Fi or G networks, mobile networks. But we're often playing them in spaces that aren't like this space here, right? I don't think I've ever picked up my phone and played the mobile game at my desk. It doesn't seem to be the space for that game to operate in. So these are you're going to assemble your own analytical framework for analyzing a text. And here is an example. I know I've cut the list off with my face here, but the full list will be on the Moodle page. Now this is just the top of the relevant concepts, theories, and ideas that I could think of and fit onto this page, right? There are many more that you could assemble in your analytical framework. For example, you could look at the let's say you could assemble a post-colonial theory looking at playing critically and the reconfiguration of game texts. Right, that could be it, and you could do this while live streaming different game texts, and that could be your digital artifact, right? So whatever speaks to you here, you could also put in further ideas, and you'll be talking about this over the next few weeks in the seminars. So again, I just wanted to highlight the fact that if you are coming from another major, or if you have interest in digital social media, but you want to look at how games are marketed and advertised, or the visual communication of a splash screen on a mobile phone game, or the way in which live streamers use software like OBS to structure the experience for their audience, or do a critical investigation of Patreon of game streamers. This would all be an appropriate way to specialize. So just to highlight the fact that there is a blog post due in weeks 2, 3, 5, 7, and 8 for this subject. The first two are designed to help get you thinking about analyzing games in specific ways. And then there's a peer commentary, which we'll talk more about in the future. And then weeks 7 and 8 are helping you focus your reflection on your digital artifact. There'll be a pitch, which is a 2-minute hard limit due in week 4, and a contextual blog post. And then digital artifacts are due in week 12 by way of a contextual report with an audio-video component there. If you have any questions about that, again, please hit me up on Discord. If you have any ideas that you want to pitch, Discord is also the way there, and the contact information for our tutors, Jasmine and Richard, will be up on the Moodle page. So just a reminder, before attending the weekly seminar, review the lecture, examine the reading, and bring your own device. That's it for me. Thank you for playing, and I will see you in the next lecture.